It's using alcohol to bridge the gap between a regretful night and a bearable morning, making sure they escape that 2:30 a.m. loop and only wake up when the sun has arrived, forcing some external structure onto their shattered internal world.
And that need to keep the light on, that's a physical manifestation of his inability to find any internal peace.
And this is where the internal conflict gets really complex, because despite all the bitterness and the self-destructive coping, the narrator seems to recognize the toxicity of his own fixation.
Yes. That line, "Truth hurts lately and I hate it that my mind's on you."
It's arguably the most insightful line in the whole piece. The truth is the painful external reality, the breakup, the indifference, and that hurts. But the hatred.
The emotion he's actually fighting against?
Right, it's directed squarely at the obsession itself. He hates the fact that his agency, his mental resources, are still chained to someone who doesn't care.
So it's a war on two fronts. The battle to survive the indifference, and the battle against his own persistent toxic memories.
Yeah, and that recognition of internal toxicity pushes us into the final stages of this arc, where the defense mechanisms start to fail and the shock of the breakpoint returns.
If the mind is constantly obsessing, what's the physical manifestation?
Restlessness. Now I'm restless as I wait for one more call.
That just perfectly defines that state of high anxiety. The narrator is physically unable to settle.
He's hoping for validation, a final word, some kind of closure that...
Based on everything else he's said, is clearly never going to come.
Right, and because that internal state of waiting is so vulnerable, the defense mechanism kicks in hard to protect it.
But it's best if I pretend I don't care at all.
And that's a calculated, conscious decision to suppress emotion and project this facade of indifference.
It's a painful theatrical performance, but one he deems absolutely necessary for self-preservation.
In the face of just such profound powerlessness and this whole pattern, this need for pretense, it just reinforces the cyclical nature of the pain. Every time he pretends not to care, he knows it's a lie, which leads him right back to the core grievance.
Which is the fact that the ex actually doesn't care.
Exactly. But the narrative truly climaxes when the narrator shifts focus. He moves from the chronic suffering of the present to the acute, instantaneous trauma of the break itself.
And the imagery used here is just incredibly powerful. It's so physical.
This is the aha moment that crystallizes the nature of how the relationship ended. We have to analyze the sudden kinetic violence of this metaphor. I was falling from the roof when you told me you were saying goodbye.
Falling from the roof, I mean, that is not a slow drift apart.
No, it's not a mutual decision.
It signifies an abrupt, catastrophic, high-impact emotional disaster. It's the feeling of having the ground just ripped out from under you mid-stride.
A total loss of stability and control. It's a physical metaphor for emotional trauma.
And the immediate follow-up lines explain why the fall felt so jarring and, frankly, so disrespectful. It wasn't just the breakup.
It was the context of the dismissal. KU's, it's too early, maybe I just wasn't worth the time.
And that is the ultimate bitter realization.
It is. He wasn't just left. He was dismissed as an afterthought, an early diversion, something disposable that didn't warrant the investment of time or commitment.
So it wasn't just a breakup, it was the feeling of hitting the pavement before you even realized you were pushed.
And that cold realization leads right back to the final emotional spiral, where the restlessness turns into sheer, exhausted frustration.
Now I'm losing my patience, and I hate it that my mind's on you.
The coping cycle is starting to break down. He's moving from numb avoidance to just active, debilitating exhaustion.
And the text masterfully concludes this whole arc with the notation vocalizing.
Which is perfect. After all the specific lyrics, the anger, the pain, the detailed regret of 2:30 a.m., the only thing left is a nonverbal release.
The words have failed him.
They have. He's described the pain as fully as language allows, and now the emotion just has to exit the structured narrative entirely.
Okay, so let's synthesize what we've traced here for you. We have followed a complete and devastating emotional journey.
We really have.
It began with that anxious, unsustainable longing of the daydream, which necessitated the destructive coping of the daydrink.
And that behavior was fueled by deep resentment and that hyper-specific, inescapable obsession of 2:30 a.m.
And it all culminated in the bitter physical memory of that sudden, disrespectful dismissal, the violent shock of the fall from the roof.
If you connect this to the broader psychological picture, the entire text is structured around this profound, destructive conflict between an intense internal experience.
His personal hell, his view from the roof, his obsessive 2:30 a.m.
And the cold external reality of being completely irrelevant to his former partner. The specificity of those details doesn't just make the pain relatable.
No, it makes it immediate and tangible. It's a map of a mind under siege.
It really is.
And that is the relevance of this deep dive. By breaking down this emotional architecture, you gain a shortcut to understanding the depth and texture of the conflict. It's not just a song about feeling bad.
It's a detailed blueprint of how obsession, resentment, and failed coping mechanisms interact when you realize you're disposable.
The narrator isn't fighting the breakup. He's fighting the fact that the breakup wasn't meaningful to the other person.
And the text confirms that fight is unwinnable, but it's impossible for him to stop.
So that duality of the daydream versus the day drink, the incredibly specific, inescapable time of 2:30 a.m., and that shocking physical metaphor of falling from the roof. These are the emotional anchors of this text that really define a modern obsessive heartbreak.
And here is a final provocative thought for you to consider, building on everything we've extracted from the lyrics.
Okay.
Given the text's strong focus on self-pity and wishing harm on the ex, that repeated, almost desperate, hope you feel alone sometimes as well, what does the repeated declaration of hating the obsession?
I hate it that my mind's on you.
What does that really suggest about the narrator's true internal desire for relief? Is the outward resentment against the ex just a temporary defense mechanism, a way to justify the drinking? Or has the battle against his own mind become a completely new, equally toxic form of obsession that he must now battle to truly move on?
Something to consider as you reflect on the architecture of acute pain. An excellent note to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into heartbreak architecture.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.